Let me ask you this, man. You have one son, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. How did you feel when you found out you were going to be a father, man? Can you go back to that moment? Do you remember that? Do you recall that? Like, what were the feelings? What were the thoughts that were kind of going through your head? You recall?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll say before I had a son, or before I had a child, I'll say, me and my wife, we were talking, and I told her that I didn't want to have children.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I've been on that for years. Okay. And it was more or less one of those times I was living based off of my experience of my father and my family. And so when I got older, I was like, well, I don't want to have those experiences with my child or to go through this and go through that. So for many years, I was like, nope, I don't want to have children. And then I don't know what, I want to say when me and my wife got married, that's my phone.
Oh.
Yeah, my phone.
Oh, you fine. I was like, what? Yeah,
no, that's my phone. No, it's the camera. But anyways, before at first I did not want to have children. And then I want to say around the time that her and I got married, there's something hit differently where I felt like I wanted to, for lack of a better term, have a complete family.
Okay.
Wife, kid, dog, picket fence, all that stuff. And
picket fence.
Yeah, I ain't got no picket fence, but I got the house, I got the dog. But I think also a lot of it was growth. It was a lot of letting go of just because my childhood with my father was a certain way doesn't mean it means now that I can make my experience as a father what I want it to be for my son. So as far as what made that click, I would say probably my wife and I getting married and just maturity kicking in of being able to take on the responsibility. Before I had children, I knew that having a child would be a lot of responsibility, and I just think I wasn't ready for that for a while. And then all of a sudden one day it just clicked, and here we are.
Well, let me just say this. I appreciate your transparency. I appreciate your honesty and just the vulnerability to share, that your relationship with your father wasn't exactly what you wanted to be. And I think that oftentimes, when you said that, it kind of resonated with me. And it resonated with me because I wondered, and I kind of went back and forth at one point. I was like, man, initially I'm thinking I'm not even married or anything like that. I'm dating, and I'm like, yeah, man, I always dreamed of having a family. But then there comes a time where it's like, okay, man, I look at, my relationship with my father. Look at, things were going on with my mom. Do I want to have a kid? You worried, fear of bringing them into a situation that's similar to what you experienced growing up. I get that. I get that totally, man. And so I think that's something that, a lot of men probably feel, but folks not necessarily know or recognize what it's stemming from. You know what I mean? So it's just like, okay, man, I'm gonna go out here and do everything that, will usually end up getting me a child. But once I find out that I'm about to have a child, it's like, nah, get rid of the child, hey, nah, I don't want this. But it's like, deep in your heart, do you really want this, or is it just like the fear of how this thing's gonna turn out, man? So I think it's a great point, man.
Yeah, even also me growing up, none of my friends had fathers in the house. None of us. None of my friends. Okay. And I will say, grew up in Arizona. Most of my friends were African American. None of us.
They were black, huh?
None of us. They was black. They was bliggity black. None of us had fathers in the house. And that even goes for my friends and just associates, even kids that weren't, my friend, but that I just knew. I have one friend. He had a father in the house, but his mother wasn't there. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So yeah. One friend had a father, but no mother in the house. She lived somewhere else. So I had taken all that into account as well, and I was allowing my circumstance and my experience with everyone else to dictate, what I want to do with my life moving forward. But once I got married, once me and my wife started having some more conversations, and me letting go of just because it happened to me doesn't mean it has to happen to mine. I let that go, and I had a child, and it changed after having him as well.
Okay. I'm gonna come back and touch on the people that you grew up with. I'm gonna touch back on that. I'm gonna circle back to that. But how did it change? You said it changed when you had a child. So once your son arrived, walk me through it, man. What was that feeling, man? I mean, I hear people like, oh man, it's just you can't explain it, man. There's love, it's this. I mean, you usually pretty good with words. So are you able to kind of put it in some words and help me understand?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like what I was afraid of wasn't what my issue was once I actually had a child.
Okay.
So I feel like before having a child, it was more or less like the responsibility of taking care of another human being and feeling as if since my father and a lot of other fathers weren't able to do it, that it's going to be very tough, and I don't want to go through it. After having a child, I don't want to say it was an issue, but the main thing that I realized that I had to work on is a connection with my child. Now, this is my experience, and this is my thought. So when a woman is pregnant, the baby is literally inside of her for 7, 8, 9 months, however long you women go. The child is inside of them. They're literally building a connection. They're not building a connection. They're literally connected to each other.
Right.
So when there was a point where my child was, I don't remember. He was maybe 2 months, 3 months old, something like that. He literally did not want me to touch him. I would go to pick him up and he would cry, scream bloody murder. And I'd give him to his mother and boom, right away he would just stop. At that very moment when that happened, I knew this is going to be tough. Not tough as in like, oh man, I can't do it. It's just work.
Okay.
I always say that a mother, it's nature that's connected with the child. With the father, you have to build a connection.
Okay.
Regardless of if he's mine, regardless if he has the same blood running through his veins as me, I have to literally connect with him and make an effort to connect. And that to me has been more tough than actually just being responsible for a child. That connection.
So, I mean, you have just answered one of the questions that I put before a ton of different men that I've had this conversation with, and everybody seems to struggle with.
Really? The same thing?
Yeah. And so, well, here's what I'll say. They struggle with answering that question. Okay? They struggle with answering that question, but when we have conversation, they all talk around it. So the guy that came in earlier today, he was talking, and he mentioned what you just mentioned, but he didn't mention that as a challenge. And so I think what you're saying is so like spot on. Moms, it's innate. Like you said, they are connected. We got the umbilical cord that you got to cut to prove that they're connected, right?
Right.
But as a father, and I don't think people really speak to that, like you have to work to establish that same connection.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so can you speak to what that experience was like for you to establish that connection? And I mean, I'm sure it's ongoing, but what challenges did that present? What extra effort did it take, or is it something that you feel like you're at a good place now? I mean, just me seeing the interaction that you and your son have, I would say yes, but me being on the outside and how you feel personally could be completely different.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a tough one. as far as the work that has to be put in, it's almost, honestly for me, I almost feel like, and this is tough, I feel like every interaction with my son could either go up or down. Almost every interaction, I could either be doing the right thing by him or doing the wrong thing by him with every interaction. And I say that because there's been times when even recently, so I'll speak to recently. So my son's 9.
Okay.
He's 9 and he's going through something.
Okay.
As far as he could be at a young stage where he's kind of testing his boundaries with me. He's testing his own boundaries. And me as a father, I'll say this, me as a father that didn't necessarily have these experiences with my father, and maybe that's what I'm struggling with. The experiences I have with him, a lot of times I literally don't know what to do.
Okay.
So there's been times where I'll discipline him or something, and then he'll be in his room or whatever, and then I'll talk to the mother, and she'll be like, you're being really, really rough with him with a lot of your interactions. Let's not forget that he is 9 and some things he needs to be talked to a certain way, and she'll tell me, like, you don't want to be looked at as just a disciplinary and have no emotions, have no feelings, and not be able to be someone that he feels comfortable and wants to talk to. So the funny thing is, I noticed with her, I've seen her discipline him, yada yada, but then he'll like automatically like give her hugs and kisses and rub and hug on her. But when I do it, it's like he's stomping off mad and upset, and then I'm stomping off mad and upset. I think a lot of times it's possible that it's the two male energies clashing, and me, of course, being the adult, being the father. A lot of times I feel like I have to go into situations with him already realizing kind of what direction it's going to go if I say it this way, if I say it that way. If I do say it that way, I need to follow it up with talking this way, with maybe possibly, being a little bit softer, being a little bit this way. I feel like with what I've noticed with my wife, she just does it. It just comes out naturally. Her ability to recognize what he needs and where he's at. And me, maybe being my wife will say I have a lot of testosterone. I'm a real man's man. Sometimes I have to dial that down because he's 9.
Okay.
And we don't live in a Spartan society where we're, treating the boys like they're about to be warriors and rough and tough and all that stuff. Sometimes instead of me giving my son not yelling at him, but just disciplining him, maybe he just needs a hug. Maybe he just needs daddy to say, "Hey, it's okay. Let me give you a hug." A lot of it is being in the moment and recognizing that what I'm seeing out of him isn't something that I need to discipline. It's something that he needs help through.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I do understand exactly.
So at the end of it, I feel like, for me at least, my experience being a father, it's a lot of mental work.
Okay.
That's not so much natural. You have to really think about how you're interacting with your child, because every little thing, it all matters. Because I might do stuff to him now, and then when he gets older, he's gonna be mad forever. Like, oh, Dad, you used to do this, do that, da 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 da. Well, in my mind, I'm like, well, I thought I was doing a good thing.
So you just touched on so much in that statement. I always ask, what qualifies you as a good father, right? What's the qualifier? Is it the kid? Is it the outcome? Is it the fact that you did your best? And in terms of getting there, something that I just, in the conversations that I've had, I asked this question, and a lot of guys actually pause, right? So, being a man's man and just thinking about how you grew up, I think, you and I have had some similar experiences in terms of how we've grown up. Growing up, I didn't necessarily always get a why. I didn't really even get an explanation. It's, you know, hey man, you getting punished or you getting, you know, whatever, and there was no like real understanding to make an association in terms of why. But also, I feel like with moms, because you said the difference between how he reacts or responds to your wife after she does her discipline style. I think sometimes they maybe can follow up with love, so that the connection's still there. I asked this question, okay? You worked in corporate before. Don't know if you've had like managerial or like supervisory type stuff where you've had people under you, but oftentimes when you're in leadership, you have people under you. They're in good leadership. Let me just say that when things are established the way they needs to, there's a system in place where the people that are under can come and give feedback to the people that are on the upper level management. And it's not feedback that I'm scared that, hey, there's going to be some retaliation, some stuff going to happen. If you say something that I don't like, hey, this thing ain't going to go well. But it's being able to express what they feel, what they're experiencing without, you know, fear of consequence. And so in having that conversation with someone else earlier, it made me ask the question, like, do you sit down with your son and have check-ins, right? Because you said, hey, man, and I really felt it when you said it, like, hey, man, I may do something and he may come back to me years down the road and say, man, you did this. That's not your heart's intent, right? It's not your intent at all. However, like, how often do you sit down and check in with him just to say, hey, man, what can I do better at? You know, what can I, you know, what do you need from me? And of course, he's 9, so he may not be able to articulate everything. Yeah. And so I think what's good or bad, I think sometimes as children, we often have expectations of our parents that go unspoken. But how many times have our parents actually sat down and just had a conversation? Because I think a conversation is really powerful in terms of connecting people. Because you want to understand how he's thinking and how he's seeing stuff. Because you're like, hey, man, at 9, I don't know what he's doing. He's exploring life. That's all he's doing. He's exploring life. And I'll tell you this, give yourself some credit. Bro, you 9 years in, bro. It sounds like a long time, but it's really not in the grand scheme of things. So when you look at your son, you realize there's so much about life that he hadn't even comprehended. Flip that over and say, hey, man, there's so much about parenting that you, at nine, you're still a kid. You're still a child. So, you know, you young in this, even though you're mature and you've got life experience, this is something that's new to you. And like I said, you said so much. One of my buddies was in the chair yesterday, and he went through similar situation. Father wasn't there. Friends he grew up with really wasn't there. And what he has now as an adult, so he struggled kind of trying to figure out some different things. He's got 2 boys. And what he made mention of yesterday was just looking for like a father mentor is what I'm going to call it. And I say mentor because it's someone who's in a different season of life. They've maybe gone through some of this. It's not that they've done everything perfect, but they just got a little bit more experience than I have. Right. So they may be able to help me through this. So when I'm feeling like I'm, you know, going blind, it's almost like you going to coach a game and you ain't seen no game footage, you just out here and you winging it. That can feel really scary, can feel really overwhelming, right? You know? Especially when the other team is so prepared and you're not. Right. So it just becomes one of those things where I look at it and I say, hey, man, you know, how often do you check in with your son? But, you know, have you considered, and I got some older guys that came in and they were having a conversation, and he was like, oh, yeah, man, me and my boys get together, and they're all mid-50s. And they're like, yeah, man, we come out on the back patio, man, we smoking cigars, and we talking about raising our kids, man. Yeah. And we check each other, and we help each other, and it's like, you don't have to do this yourself.
Right.
You know, find some like-minded people that, hey, man, you want to hear from, people that you value their advice, and maybe, you know, be able to have a conversation like that where it's like, hey, man, what do you think about this approach? Could I have done this better? Could I have did this or whatever? And maybe that helps, you know, maybe that alleviates some of the, I'll say worry or just anxiety that may come up from like, damn, am I doing this right? You know, hopefully I'm not causing any, you know, damage or doing anything that can't be undone.
Right. Well, I mean, shoot, honestly, man, you're speaking a lot to what I've honestly been talking about with my wife, at least recently, is that I wanted to start a fathers group for the very thing that you were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to you don't have to get too deep into it, but I feel like society doesn't nurture men now.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, like I said, me growing up with all my friends not having their fathers in the house, who do we learn from?
Okay.
Who did we emulate? And I can tell you right now, I can tell you who we were emulating. We were emulating the rappers.
Okay.
Growing up, we were emulating the basketball players, the football players. Those are the people that we looked up to. That's how. Those are the ones that we dressed a certain way. We dressed because they dressed that way. We talked to girls because they talked to girls that way. You know, I can tell you right now. I can say that my father taught me how to ride a bike and how to swim.
Okay.
Those two things. Period.
That's it.
That's the end of the story. Okay. And it's not. And I don't want to sit here and act like my father wasn't around, because he was. We didn't live together, but I'd stay with him, once a month, maybe at his house over the weekend, yada yada yada. But he didn't have these moments of, hey, son, let me teach you about the birds and the bees and about the trees and the fleas or whatever. We didn't have those moments. So, long story short, I do my best now to make an effort to speak to my son about how he's feeling and this and that. I will admit that a lot of times you just kind of get wrapped up into parent mode, and you, at least for me, I don't always stop and say, hey, let me check in really quick to make sure things are going okay. But I will say that how would I want to word it? So I'll give you an example. So my son, when he goes to school, or even when he goes to camp or whatever, I see how he interacts with other people. And then, as a matter of fact, this just happened last week. He's in camp all week, all day he's in camp, having fun, running, jumping. Sometimes I'll peek in and check on him. I'll see him running, jumping, playing. The moment that I go to pick him up, just me, the moment I go to pick him up, his whole attitude changes. He goes into, because he's comfortable with me and with my wife, so we all do it. We have our private life, our public life, and we have like a secret life. He shows them his public life, and he shows me his private life. So sometimes I see in his private life, I see more of the side of him that's comfortable with us, that's he's going to say how he really feels. Maybe if he's at camp and he's sad, he's not going to show the kids that he's sad. But the second he gets with me, he's whining or crying about something. And then if I don't recognize that that's what he's doing, I'm reacting to how he's treating me at that moment and not realizing, oh, shoot, you probably had a rough day today. And you're letting it all out in your own little 9-year-old way. I'm saying that to say, as a father and as a parent, you have to really be focused and dialed in, and not take everything as if it's your fault, or that your child is just whining and crying just to do it.
So I appreciate you saying that, because that was the next thing I was going to actually say to you. So
I'm answering all your questions earlier.
Yeah, you cold right now. This thing is like I told you, bro.
It's going to be easy.
This was supposed to be like this, because something that I've realized, unrelated to parenthood, but it has really helped me, is that I have to get my ego out of the way and stop making everything so personal.
Oh yeah,
it's not an attack on me. Sometimes some people are dealing with something. It may affect me. Bro. I may experience it, but that doesn't mean that it's directed to me. Doesn't mean I'm responsible for it, or I caused this. Doesn't mean any of that stuff. And so I think tends to be a tendency when a child's acting a certain way that, hey man, I'm taking this thing personally, and it's like, nah, maybe like what's going on with you? You know what I mean? When someone who you've been around your child for 9 years, so you know kind of how he, tends to carry himself, what his day to day, I'm gonna say personality is.
Yeah.
And so when you see something outside of that, you're like, okay, hey man, what's going on with you? What's causing the difference? Versus like, okay, you know what? It's this, and this, and you react like you said, reacting from a place of like this has to do with me, and it's just like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's just comfort. You start to get comfortable with each other, and then when there's a glitch in the matrix, sometimes you don't recognize it. I was talking to my wife about that the other day. Is a lot of times with my son, he'll be going through something, and then I'll kind of discipline him, and then it's not till afterward I'm like, oh shoot, he was going through something else, and I was reacting to that, and so now, I have to go back and speak to what the real issue is, and I just wasted a lot of time and energy getting upset with something when it really had nothing to do with me. I mean, that's just humans, period. I think children are a direct reflection of they're for sure they're direct reflection of our own personalities. I look at my son, I'm telling you, he is me and my wife 100%. The same way I'm my father and my mother 100%. So he has all that in him. So a lot of times when I'm getting upset with him, I'm getting upset with a piece of myself that I don't like, that I'm not able to, that I haven't maybe dealt with, and I'm trying to deal with through him without recognizing, hey man, you're doing the same stuff I do, that I did, same thing that I feel. And my job as a father is to help you through that and not get so mad and upset to where it's affecting me in my day to day. I mean, man, being a parent, it's I shouldn't say just being a parent, because anybody can be a parent. I think when you're a parent and when you care and you really want the best for your children or your child, and you're trying, it's very difficult. Not impossible, just it's work. Yeah. Anything that's worth it is going to be work. So I mean, I got into fatherhood knowing that I wanted to be the best father, husband, person that I could be, and it's a lot of work,
So I'm gonna ask 2 questions. Answer how you want to answer, in order wise or whatever. So you said you want to be the best that you can be. I'm curious what being the best means, and I keep hearing you use the word it's work. It's work. And just the way you're saying it, like, most people don't like to go to work. You know what I'm saying? Most people don't. So is there a way to kind of reframe it, and what do you mean by like it's work? Is it like a task? Is it a chore? Because some people go to, what they consider work, and it's like, geez, I got to do this.
Right.
Or is it based off of what you just said, like you see a reflection of your son in you, and you're recognizing some of the stuff that's getting. So is it work for you in terms of working on yourself? And that's the part of it? Is that what you mean by work, or?
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of the work it's almost fighting against society. Okay. And I say that because me and my wife, we kind of look at ourselves as almost like old school parents. We kind of have old school ways of parenting, as far as like, how you eat at the table, how you interact with other adults, how you talk to other people, how do you spend your time? So for instance, when my son goes to camp, all the kids now have phones. They all have cell phones. 9-year-olds, 10, 11, 12-year-olds have cell phones. Hey, I mean, who am I to say that, your parenting style is what it is? Hey, you do what you do. But now, when my son goes to camp and he comes back, now we're fighting about him wanting a cell phone. That's the type of work.
Okay.
I'm working with, my son might have an altercation with another kid, and the parent might take it as, well, your child needs to be disciplined, he needs to be put in the corner, he needs to be, it's like, me, I'm smart enough to know, hey, they're kids, they're learning. I am not going to get mad and yell and scream at somebody else's child because they're children, they're learning. Mm-hmm. So now I have to fight with rationalizing with another parent about, hey, about this and about that. That's the type of fight that I mean. There's things on TV or Instagram or TikTok, whatever, that my child, we don't let him see that stuff, but now I have to do the best I can to keep him away from that. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is, I feel like humans, some communities have gotten away from being a community.
Okay.
And the village or community is what really helps raise your child. Mm-hmm. And when I look at parenting one way, another family looks at it this way, this family looks at it that way. That's what I mean by it's being work. It's difficult. I mean, we've had plenty of, my son's had plenty of friends in and out of his life, mm-hmm. where you spend time with the child, and mm-hmm. then the other parent's parenting style starts to kind of affect now how I deal with my child, because I don't necessarily want my child to go over your house because I know you guys watch these things on TV. You guys eat this type of food. You guys talk this way. You guys mm-hmm. allow your children to do mm-hmm. to jump all on the couch. But I don't, it's even small things like that. Where when I grew up, of course not all the parents were the same, but there was a lot of the same rules when I went over people's house. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I go over my friend's house, like I knew not to jump on the couch. I knew that I needed to sit in a certain seat before we ate, because this is where the kids sit. This is where the mm-hmm. adults sit. This is how you talk. If somebody comes into the room, you speak to them.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? That's the fight. I mean, I feel like I'm trying to raise my child to be this kid that grew up in the 80s, like I grew up, but that's not what it is anymore. And then, like I said, there's things on TV that he might see. There's movies that are out that he doesn't watch, but all the other kids are watching. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean for me. That's the work that me and my wife deal with. This is my phone again.
Hotline bling over there.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's interesting. And that makes so much sense when you say it like that, because I don't want to assume what you mean when you say that, but I think that really clarifies it quite a bit, because I think that's always going to be the struggle, right? Mm-hmm. And you're trying to, it sounds like, establish your influence and make sure that the influence that you have still means something, right? Mm-hmm. Not that just I'm your parent, but my words and the way that we're going about doing this, you guys have, I'm going to use a phrase that's common now. You guys are doing what I feel like is a form of like conscious parenting. Mm-hmm. And so you're very purposeful and intentional about the way that you go about doing things. I don't think anything's wrong with that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are winging it. Of course, there's no game plan. There's no strategy book. There's no, something that says, hey, man, follow these cues right here and your child's going to turn out perfect and they're not going to have any struggles and it's going to be easy, right? Mm-hmm. It's a learning experience, right? And so I think that the approach that you're taking, it's probably going to feel like a struggle for a little while, just because you're establishing things and you got two competing, entities for like your child's interest, man, and mm-hmm. their mind and how they're looking at things. So it's always going to be there. I guess how do you deal with that? How do you counter that? Because what I think you guys are trying to do, and you stop me if I'm wrong, mm-hmm. Okay. But just based off the interactions and some of the conversations that you and I have had in the past, I think you guys are really like intent on cultivating a life, mm-hmm. okay? Whereas most people say, hey man, I raised my kid, and that's like a real old school mindset terminology phrasing that we hear from people. Oh, yeah, I'm raising my kids. Raising means I'm providing the very basics, food, shelter, water. Mm-hmm. That's something you can do with a cattle, man. Right. You know what I'm saying? Some animals, bro. You can go raise them. But this is a life that's going to go out and be a life unto itself. And, what are you equipping your son with? What are you pouring into this life to help it grow the way that it needs to so that it can become the fullest life that it can possibly become? And I think about it when I use the word cultivate. I use that because it makes me think about the work of my grandmother and on my father's side used to have a garden. And I remember seeing my uncle go out and like till the land, man. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And break it up. And it's some work. It's some work, man. You know what I mean? And he's out here all in the mud, and sometimes his feet getting stuck, and it's this, and it's all of this stuff that feels like, hey, man, I'm not making no progress. You're doing all of this to tear up the ground, break up all of this, and you compete with all of this different stuff just to make the soil right so that it's receptive for the seeds that you're putting in there. And so it sounds like, I look at what you're saying as the same, man. You're going to have to break the ground up. You're going to have to make sure that he's receptive to what you're putting down and not for the other stuff, man. Mm-hmm. And you may not see the fruit of your labor until many years down the line, man. But I think that as you check in with your son and make sure that he has the stuff that he needs or knows or whatever that he needs, I think it's fine, man. I think that will it diminish some the struggle, the work? I think so. I think right now you're just probably in a stage where it probably feels a little bit more extreme than what it is.
Yeah, what can be tough is we live in a community now where it's a community within a community. Mm-hmm. And I say, I say that because there's communities that are from different countries that live in our community. So, and my son goes to school with them. So of course, him being 9, he doesn't get it, and I don't expect him to. But the other communities that we are around, they have a community mindset and they stick to it, and they understand that. Well, I don't know if they fully understand, but they have a sense of community. And as much as we want to say that we're all the human race, there's pockets of communities that understand it. It's us against you. Mm-hmm. So my son goes to school with kids that their families, they already have their setup. Those kids at his school, they go to school. After they get out of school, they go to tutoring. They go to tutoring or they go to Kumon. They don't play football. They don't play basketball. They don't play those type of sports. They go to school, they go to Kumon, and they might play, I don't know, cricket. Mm-hmm. They might play squash. They might, that's what they do. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now, and also those communities have a plan for their kids. They have a plan for what's direction their life is going to go. And since there's so many of them doing the same thing, it's not a problem for them because they're all doing it. Okay. Now let's go to my son. He's one of the only ones that looks like him in his school.
Okay.
What community is he going to attach to? Mm-hmm. And the community that he's going to attach to, honestly, is going to be me, my wife, him, and my dog. That's so we have to fight against what he sees based on what we need him to do. You don't need to do what everybody else is doing because we have a plan for you, and having him stick to that plan can be tough because those kids are doing this, doing that. Well, how come I can't? It's like, that's not what we're doing. We're going in this direction. And he sees, we don't watch a lot of TV, we don't do a lot of that stuff. But his parents both grew up playing sports. So, matter of fact, right now we're watching softball because my wife, she played softball. And the college girls are in the College Girls World Series softball. Okay. So we're watching that. And I used to play football, so we'll watch college football when college football comes on. So even that little bit of, let's say, college football that he gets, now he wants to be like the football guys. And it's like, well, we're not going in that direction. We have something else planned for you. But sometimes those outside forces really start to affect how he sees himself. Mama, are you ready to go?
Yeah, hold it. I was going to let you finish what you were saying. Yep. I'm getting the line up in the middle of the conversation. Did we take this off?
Yeah, I usually take it off. Because it's just there. It doesn't, to me, don't do nothing. It's not like a design or anything. It's just extra hair. So anyways, long story short, I think the biggest thing is when you... How deep can we get on this?
As deep as you want to go, bro. I'll go as deep as you want to go.
I'm about to say, all right.
You going off in the ocean? Ocean deep?
You know what I'm saying? I think I'm tiptoeing around it, but what I'm really trying to say is like African Americans, we... Talk, bro. I was about to say, black Americans, African Americans, whatever you want to say, I've noticed, especially living out here, that we're so separated. So not together that it's almost sad. Because as much as we want to, like I said earlier, as much as we want to say, hey, we're all humans, that's not the game that everybody's playing. That's not the game. You can see it clear as day when you go around other people from other countries, other communities. Like, they don't want you there, And if you were to think about African American communities, what community do we have that's pushing us forward? You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a church community. There's a Greek culture. There's fraternity, sororities. There's gang culture. There's Jack and Jill, culture.
Hold that thought one more time. Let me set this one more time. Jack and Jill culture.
But where do we go when we want just your typical middle upper class families that understand, hey, there's an attack on our kids, and what can we do to combat that attack?
Can I share something with you?
Please do.
So, believe it or not, you're not by yourself in this thinking. Okay? I have tons of men that sit down and they're all looking for the same thing, man. They're all looking for the same thing. Everybody has a different way of trying to go about, like, trying to find the connection. And so some of them they've tried to, connect with each other, and it's just like, one thing I'm not really this about that person. And the reality is this, man. Do you have to connect on everything?
Right.
Or do we have to connect on what matters most, right? And so my thought process is this. If you're aligned on certain ideas and certain understandings, let's just take, for instance, like the idea that it takes community to raise this child, this village. You know what I mean? If you're aligned on that and the values that you want to instill in your kids, I don't have to be connected with you on everything. We don't have to like the same foods. We don't have to have the same damn sports teams.
Right.
We need to be focused on this goal. When we go out here, you're a former football player, right? Hey, bro, did you agree with everybody on the team?
Right.
Did you have the same lifestyle as everybody on the team? No. Did everybody hang out at the same place? No. Some of y'all did, some of y'all didn't. But when you suited up, we went out there with one goal in mind.
We all got the same jersey on, the same helmet, the same socks, the same.
And we got one goal in mind, and that's win the game tonight, right?
Right.
And so sometimes it takes that where, hey, man, I want to be so connected with you, but like maybe I can't be. Maybe the connection that I need to have is that, hey, man, we want the best for our kids, and best for us looks like XYZ. Do you check this box, check this box, check this box? Yeah. Now can we figure out what's the best way of going about doing this? Because you're going to have your way of doing it. I'm going to have my way of doing it. And who's to say what's right and what's wrong? I don't think there's a right and a wrong as much as it is like what's best for the current situation.
Right.
And so some of it's just adapting. The best coaches I've seen, just going back to sports, are the coaches that can adapt and adjust in game.
Yeah.
Not the guy that can go back and watch the film and say, oh, damn, man, we could have did this. Yeah, if you would have known that in the game, it's the difference between winning and losing.
Yeah.
And so how do you make those adjustments? But how do you get on the same page with a group of people? And so I just say that to encourage you that, you're not by yourself. I got a client, one of the older guys I mentioned before, says he goes out on his back patio or whatever, and just got a few guys that he's met when he moved down here. And they just have these conversations. Well, he came from a small town in Virginia, and weren't a whole lot of people that looked like him, but the people that did look like him were all in the same, socioeconomic class, right? Same demographics, and it might have been 20, 30 of them or something like that, all together. All the families knew each other. All of the families made sure that they were intentional about connecting. And so when he came here, he was like, man, it was beneficial to me. I want my kids to have that. So he was intentional about, let me see. Okay, when I come across these people, when I come across this, let me say, hey, man, I'm looking for this. And he's filtering and he's going through and he's got his group. And so I think the idea that you had earlier, I think it's one that's a great idea. It's something that I support wholeheartedly because it's something that I would like to participate in and try to help, facilitate and get it, because I hear the same sentiments echoed, by different men, and everybody seems to feel like, man, damn, shit, man, we're not connected like this, we're not connected like that. You're not by yourself. You're not the only one having that thought. So how do you bridge the gap? And so
and exact to your point, I feel like I've done my best to make an effort, and I can tell you right now, my son has had some friends where we were cool with the parents, and then the minute they found out something about us that they didn't like, didn't talk to us anymore. I'll give you an example. Of course, I don't need to say any names, but my son had a friend, knew him for a while, used to play football together, run, jump, play, whatever. Had a conversation with the parent, with the father, about, we were talking about religion. He's very religious. I'm not so much religious, but I'm respect, of course, everyone, whatever you do, great. And the moment he found out I wasn't religious like him, stopped talking to us. Didn't pick up his phone, no more texts, no more play dates, none of that. Just based off of, I don't see things, I don't have the same religion as you do, and everything's done because of that. Now before that, he told me, man, you're a great guy, your son's great, he's smart, he's intelligent, he plays chess, he taught him at 3 years old. Wow, great, everything was great. But just because we don't kneel to the same God or whatever you want to say, everything was out the window.
I love that you're saying this, and I appreciate the honesty, man. That's what I look to get to the heart of this. It's just having open, honest, transparent conversation, right? And I think that's part of the problem, and that's why I said we have to understand that I don't have to connect with you on every single level,
right?
Now if this is something that's important to you, and this is something that you have a high priority, high value on, then I can understand that, right? I can understand that. So my thought process is this: establish the guidelines. if we gonna go do this, establish the guidelines. You know what I mean? Hey, I heard a guy over the weekend. I went to a yoga conference, right? You hear me talk about Sadhguru all the time. Huge fan. He was there, and he was talking about raising his daughter, man.
The guru guy?
Yeah.
And
he was talking about, when his child came out, she just travel, and she go all the way around the world with him, all these different places. And he said she started traveling with him when she was about 3 years old. And he said people have a natural tendency when you see a child to try to teach a child something. Oh, ABC, 1, 2, 3, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, listen, don't teach my child anything. He said if he would catch somebody, like, hey, don't do that. You know, you can play with my child, have a good time with my child, but don't try to teach my child anything. Oh, man, you don't need to do that. Something's wrong with that. Like, blah, 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 blah. Just don't do it. Cool. Out of respect for what he's saying, cool. He said he wanted his daughter to just observe. Just watch. I don't want other people to impart all of this different stuff that may not be meaningful at all. Observe, and then when the time is right, I'll teach you what you need to know. The teaching part is easy. It's simple, you know. But he said by the time his daughter was like 7 years old, 8 years old, she was already speaking 3 languages. Not because somebody taught her, because she just was observing.
Right.
It wasn't this ABC, you know, what was the itsy bitsy spider. It wasn't all of this BS stuff that we just push on kids. You know what I mean? And so I say that to say that.
Well, I used to homeschool my son, so you know.
Exactly.
You already know.
I get it, bro. I get it. And so you guys are very intentional about that. And I think that, like right here for me, perfect. No, right there, perfect. I think that, you know, taking that approach, I think it's very important to be intentional. However, I think that other people have to understand that, like, okay, you know, what levels establish the ground rules, because I don't think that was ever established. And sometimes if we don't agree on everything, we feel like, oh man, I can't fool with this person. Like, okay, that's I've learned just being a barber for a little over a decade now. There gonna be times when you don't agree with somebody. Can we still respect each other? Can I still look at you like, oh, okay, cool, man. He looks at this way, and that's the perspective that he sees it in, and that's cool.
As long as it's nothing too crazy where it's all right, man.
So it ain't even too crazy. I just want to understand you right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know how you got to where you're. Can you walk me through? Teacher used to say back in the day, show your work, man.
Show your work, yeah.
Can you show me your work? How did you arrive at this? And it wasn't that my teacher wasn't so much on the right answer as much as I want to know what your process of thinking was, and how because if I understand your process, I can tell you that process is not going to serve you when we go to this level right here. Right. So we need to change this. We need to adjust this. We need to, tinker with this a little bit. My thought process is the same. How you're looking at something, I may look at it and say, oh, damn, if I was thinking that same way, I probably would come to the same result. And so now I try to understand people versus not trying to say that we have to be the same all the time. And I think so many people want that and don't understand it. And so I think we back ourselves in the corners when it comes to building that sense of community that you talked about, because there was, I know growing up, just an understanding. Anybody that I talked to, and I just met a lady, I'm trying to think where she said she grew up at, but wasn't anywhere around here, wasn't even in the South. Mm-hmm. But her experience, and she's 44, I'll be 40 in September, the experiences we could relate to. Oh yeah, people said this, they did this, the adults acted this way, they expected this from you. So there was a uniformity in the thought process.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying earlier. I feel like it's not like that as much.
We've gotten away from it.
We've gotten way away.
Everybody wants to be an individual, but we don't realize that you still need to be part of a collective, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I get the whole, unique individuality aspects of it, but at what cost? You know what I mean? At what cost?
Right.
Is what I always ask people.
Well, you know me, I'm in marketing, so we could take this conversation a whole different way. So, I mean, a lot of that stuff is intentional, especially like I was talking about African American boys and girls. What's being put out there in the media, it's intentional.
Oh, yeah.
Now as far as parenting styles and whatnot, a lot of that may be, I forget the percentage, but a lot of percentage of people are, they don't communicate with their family anymore because of whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of that starts, you have to be an individual, like, I'm not with my family, my group anymore. Now I got to do everything on my own. So you see a lot of pockets of people that's all over the place that are just kind of on their own. And we're one of them. It's just me, my wife, my son, and my dog. And we're, we don't have another group outside that we have a couple families here and there that do similar things as us. But,
so what you just told me earlier, and I love the way you said it. You were talking in reference to the connection. Whether it's blood, whether it's your child or not, you still have to build that connection.
Right.
And so if you understand the value of having like-minded people, then you have to do what you have to do. You have to work, you know what I mean, to build that, because it's going to give your child the best, environment to grow up in, right? And so I look at it and I think to myself, like, hey man, don't give up on it. Don't stop looking, now that I know that's definitely something that you may be interested in, if I come across some people, try to direct them your way.
Yeah,
for
sure.
I mean? And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I get it.
Yeah, I almost feel like I wouldn't even be so much parenting like groups. I feel like just men, period.
So that's part of what I want to establish here, because I want to be able to have a dialogue, one evening where we got 4 or 5 guys to come out and just sit down. Let's just talk.
Man, I love that.
What you're saying right now is meaningful, and that's why I said, like, I started seeing this and started like realizing, like, everybody thinks that, like, oh man, damn, I'm dealing with this. No, you're dealing with something in nuance. It's got, your own unique spin on it, but it's the same issue this person got.
Yeah,
and this is this. And I've started trying to facilitate more of that, because I'm the person that hears it all. And so I'm like, oh yeah, this is the same as this. This is the same as this. This person don't know this, so if somebody may call and say, hey man, can I get in? Can I do this? Can I do that? Yeah, cool, man. Okay, I'm gonna put this person in here when this person comes in. And let me just see what happens.
Yeah.
And every time that I've kind of like, puppeteer type stuff, man, it's been phenomenal, man. Orchestrated.
Yeah, you need another one of these couches like right here or whatnot.
Oh, bro.
Yeah, I mean,
we gonna redesign this thing, bro. I want to do that, and that's part of it, because I feel like, believe it or not, everybody that comes to me is part of my community. And one of my barber mentors told me years ago, and I'm not trying not to hold you too long.
No,
hopefully you're not getting into anything. I'll put this off of you, but you can still talk.
My day's free.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll just get this off of you. You can still talk.
Okay.
But barber mentor said this, man. Like, your clients are all a reflection of you in some way. And so I was trying to explain this to my mom, because my mom was like, why are you talking about this? You don't want these people. No, I don't want everybody. Everybody's not my customer. Everybody's not. There's some people that I'm going to vibe with, right? And we're gonna see things the same way. And doesn't mean we're gonna agree on everything, but we're just a little bit more in connection, right? And so some people, it's an immediate like, ooh, yeah, nah, this ain't gonna work.
Yep.
And it's cool. And it's not that I'm messing their head up or anything like that, because it's just like, hey, we just don't click like that. We don't connect. We don't vibe. And so I'm cool with that. And so I say that because all of my clients, they ironically enough, a lot of them hang out in the same places. A lot of them see each other and don't even know. And so I've had more guys that walk in here, got here a couple minutes early for an appointment. Was like, oh man, I know you from somewhere.
Yeah.
Where have I seen you? It's like,
I've done that, man, actually,
Josh,
in here.
Josh cuts your hair. Like, oh wow, man, wow, and they're just blown away. And so it convicted me to say, hey man, you know what? You need to be more intentional about this. You need to, start doing this, because it's an idea that I've had for a while. I just haven't executed on it, man. And so knowing what to do in execution can be like miles apart. And what my buddy said yesterday, he said he was listening to something with Jay-Z and Kevin Hart, and he was just like, trying to narrow the gap between, knowing what to do in execution, man. And so, like I said, that's definitely something that I want to do, because I think it's important for men to get together and just have these kind of conversations, because we're the foundation of the community, man.
For sure.
And I feel like when men are collectively on the same page, I feel like it's so much BS that just don't fly, man.
Yeah.
Just don't fly. And I think, like I said, a lot of the men that I have in here are like-minded in some ways. You know what I mean? Not every way, but in enough ways that, we can see some commonality and move on that commonality.
Yeah, I would love that. There's on YouTube. There's I don't know. I don't like watch it. I've just seen it flipping through. Anyway, I don't know if there's a rapper or somebody. They'll do talks inside a barbershop.
Okay.
And whatnot. And me personally, like I said, I'm in marketing and whatnot. Me personally, I kind of don't want to hear I don't always want to hear, in my opinion, I don't want to hear Jay-Z. Right. And Kevin Hart. You know why? Because they live a whole
completely
different life than I live.
I'm with you.
They don't deal with what I deal with at this level. That doesn't mean it's good or bad. That's what they do. And then sometimes I just want to hear the everyday average person. What do you go through? Because you're going through something similar to what I'm going through. And like you said, I'll probably see you at some point. Absolutely. Or my son is going to play on the same football team as your child or the same school, whatever. So we're going through the same stuff. But, I would encourage, if you were to do something here, I'm down with it. Like on a Saturday, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, you want to bring 4 or 5 guys, I'm telling you right now, I'll be here. I kid you not.
Okay.
I'll sit over here. I don't care where it is.
Listen, so I'm working on setting that up. I'm glad to have that support and hear that. There's a lot of different things that I'm trying to do to really bring men together. That's what the whole scope of the podcast is. It's called the Authentic Exchange, right? And it's really for men, man. For that, because I feel like there is power when we can take off the facade. Hey man, my joint is bigger than yours type stuff. Get out of here with that stuff. Right. Let's just talk and meet each other and just see what's going on, bro. Because when people sit in this chair and I throw this cape on them and I start cutting, bro, I hear it all. Mm-hmm. I hear it all. And it's the vulnerability that people have in exposing themselves. Like you said, we got all of these different, caps that we wear. You know what I'm saying? Who we are in public, who we are in private, and then who we are when we with ourselves. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where when people sit in this chair, I'm just gonna say it's my gift to be able to get people to at least open up and connect on a deeper level than just the surface level stuff that most people do. Right. And so I want to leverage that and see if I can, and whoever wants to be a part, just be a part. But understand it, hey, here's parameters. This is what we're operating in. You know what I mean? Nah, you ain't got to agree. If it comes to that, more than that, you find a best friend and, hey, man, we raise our kids together like this, whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? You find somebody, hey, man, I go golfing with or whatever. Cool. But I at least want us to be able to do this much because I think there's so much power in that. Now, one question I didn't get to, but I do want to ask is this, and like I said, I wanted to get back to it. You took me so many different places, man. So much good conversation. With there only being one father, and I'm sure this person, while he was in the household, he probably had to work and bust his tail. So I don't know how much his son got the chance to see him interact with him. How did you establish, I know you said earlier, the athletes and TV and all of this kind of stuff. How did you establish your concept of manhood?
That is tough. Yeah. Shoot.
How did you figure that out, right? You know what I mean? Because it's man, I didn't see this, and I didn't see that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, I can say that to start off with, it was being the opposite of what was done to me. Okay, that was almost like the first step.
100%.
And this is I'll say it's not like my dad he didn't beat me. He didn't do anything like that. It's just. That's a good question. Like I said, first of all, I was just doing opposite of that. Secondly, it was wanting my son to be better than me, as far as his intellect, as far as even how. Oh, can I get that?
Yeah, go.
You want me to just hold this mic?
Yeah.
Because it's gonna keep going on. I think the landscapers are at the house.
Okay.
Anyways.
Is it ringing or?
No. It's just They're cutting the grass.
Okay, gotcha. I was like, I can pause this.
My fault. Because you're going to edit this, all right?
Yeah. I chop some stuff up. Definitely.
My fault, because it keeps going off.
No, you good, bro. You good.
Okay. Yeah, so the first one was, doing opposite of what my father did to me. Mm-hmm. And basically with that was just being there. Just being there and being present. Mm-hmm. And not present as in like, look, daddy's here, but I'm on my phone. But, just being that ear that he can talk to or just teach him things. Oh, and that was the other one, is teaching them things. So I can say, man, by the time my son was probably 6 or 7, mm-hmm. I'd given him, of course I don't want this to happen, but if something were to happen to me, like, you're good. Mm-hmm. He could ride a bike, he could swim, he could read, he can write, he could spell, he could do addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I had given him already by the age of 6 or 7 enough skills to further his experience and live. So it was that. What was the original question?
How did you come up with your concept of manhood? How did you establish it? How did you develop? Like, where did you get your ideas of what manhood was? And the follow-up question, which you just kind of answered a little bit, is based off of your concept of manhood. Are there things that now, as you've matured and you have a son, are there some of those things that you're, whether it came from the lack or the absence of, or just something that you're picking and choosing now that you can be intentional about how you see men? Because I'll give it to you like this so that maybe it resonates a little bit more. For me, what I was taught manhood was pretty much a lot of, hey man, go out here, sleep around, knock this chick off, knock that chick off, get your notches on your belt, man.
Yeah.
You done got your son, buddy, you done this and this, all of those different type of things. And it's like, well, like, is that something that I want to carry with me? Is that how now that I'm establishing, because that's why I said, like, the outside influences that you were speaking of earlier, there's a lot of stuff that just happens in natural interaction. And so it can really color and shape how you see things. And so, I don't know if it was a coach, if it was, one of the guys that was at the corner grocery store or something like that, and you just see this old man and he just carry himself this way or something like that. Like, I always ask, like, where did you pick it up? Was it trial and error?
Yeah, that is a tough question. It's tough because if you grow up and you don't have that father male figure, you start to revert to, like, what you just said, like, knock this girl out, do this, do that, which to me, like I said earlier, is based off of what I saw and who we looked up to. We looked up, like I said, looked up to the rappers, the ball players, blah, blah, blah. Now that I'm older, it honestly is, I feel like it's forever developing.
Right.
For the manhood is forever developing. And I say that because nowadays, what it means to be a man in society, even that means something different. The men are taking, Men are like, all right, do you know what I mean?
Flipped on its head.
It's flipped on its head. So, like I said, like my wife will say, like, I have a lot of testosterone. If a lot of people heard me talk, they might look at me as a toxic male.
Yeah.
But but me as a man, I'm like, hey, look, I do my best to be respectful. I look you in the eye when we talk. Mm-hmm. I try to be honest with what I speak about. I'm respectful to my wife. Of course, I don't beat her. I don't do any of that stuff. I speak to her.
I try to smacking her up none.
Yeah. A couple times every now and again, she didn't want to put no ketchup on my fry. But no, it's like it's forever being molded, and a lot of it is just kind of being. A lot of it is being respectful to yourself. What do I want? Like you said, sleeping around and whatnot. It's like, that's fun, but are you? What kind of risk are you taking for yourself? Mm-hmm. And then when you're taking those risks and say something happens to you, are you giving somebody else that disease or whatever that you got from the other chick because, I'm just doing my thing? Are you being respectful to yourself? I think a lot of it is having rules. Being a man, I feel like, is having like rules for yourself that are positive and sticking to them, and not only feeling that way, but also exuding, putting out that same energy to other people that you're talking to. So when y'all walk into the room, what kind of energy am I giving off? Mm-hmm. And I can tell that based off of how people deal with me. Mm-hmm. You know, I feel like that's part of being a man. And maybe it's not so much being a man, but just being a human. That's a very difficult question to answer. I almost don't even. Listen, I almost feel like I'm not even answering it. Yeah.
So just think about it. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be now. You know, you may come back in. You're gonna get a cut again. You know what I mean? So
because being a man at one point was, yeah, my wife, I treat her like crap because she's lower than me, and I beat her. I beat her down, and I know kids are there to be seen and not heard, and I beat them. That's what being a man was at one point. Now in 2023, man, I don't know. That's a good question.
And that's why I say so. You are an evolved thinker. You're matured in your approach to life enough that you can choose what you want manhood to look like, right? And so that's why I asked the question, because I think a lot of us probably grew up with superficial ideas of what manhood was. Like I said, I know people that, you know, hey man, they base their whole manhood off of how many women they slept with. Like,
yeah,
you know
I've been through that too.
If hey man, if I ain't got, you know, 20, 30, 100 chicks, you know, like when you hear people talk about Wilt Chamberlain, as great a basketball player as he was, oh man, Wilt Chamberlain slept with this many women, man. Can you believe that? That's like, nah, he had some other stuff, but we look at him like, oh man, you know. And so it's certain things that other people elevate that it's just like, okay, man, maybe you realize, maybe you got older, it's like, okay, you know what, I always have to be tough. I always have to be strong.
Yeah.
You know, to me, that's a faulty premise. That's something that, you know, I grew up on, that men are always supposed to be strong. The reality is that you're not always strong.
Right.
That even as a father, as a husband, you deal with stuff. Even as a father, as a husband, as a man, just in general, there are certain things that happen that you're not always at peak performance, right?
Right.
And so being able to realize that, like, no, it's okay to express emotion. You know, not just feeling like, okay, I can either be really happy and excited, you know, preferably at a football game or some sporting event, or I can be angry and I can fight and I can, you know, what does this look like? Because these are things that most men have as their concepts of what manhood is. And my thing is, I don't want you to be in the passenger seat. I don't want you to be in the back seat. I want to put you in the driver's seat and say you determine where you're going in terms of what manhood looks like for you. And it can be something that's always being refined. It can be something that's always changing as you change, because the reality is this, and I had a couple of fathers say this, and I loved it, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. Parenting and just, you know, being a man in general, and you kind of touched on it just a little bit when you said just being a human, there's a certain way that you should respond and carry yourself. There's a certain way that, like, just as a human, I'm going to give somebody else respect. You know? And I think that we're not as intentional as we need to be when it comes to the way that we operate. And so being able to go in and, you know, intentionally say, hey man, I don't like this, I do like that, you know, moving this, and piecing this thing together so that you have your concept, ideology, or whatever that you feel about manhood, it's comfortable for you. You know what I mean? What's comfortable for you? What you know, are the things that you value? You know what I mean? And that's really what it comes down to when I look at it. You know what I mean? Because like I said, I think that there are things in life that you were taught, and some of the stuff that you were taught might have just been some survival stuff. And so, okay, somebody might have told you one certain thing. Oh man, you know, go in here. I grew up in the South. You know, hey man, you deal with white people. White people gonna do like this. It's gonna be like this. It's gonna be like this. Well, is that how I choose to see the world now? Because that's gonna cut off a whole other, perspective, options, and things.
Right.
And it's going to limit what I'm doing. And so I guess, what I'm trying to get to at the core is limiting beliefs. And so what do you believe about manhood? You know what I mean? Is I guess maybe a better way to state it might spark up some more stuff. And like I said, not necessarily that if something happens while you're having this conversation would be great, but if something resonates when you're at the house, I'm sure it'll be even better, man. Because I'm just having a conversation just to spark your brain. Because when it looks at like what you believe about manhood, and are some of those beliefs limiting? Because like I said, old school guys, and I'll say this because part of what you said, like, okay, how people treat their women and stuff like that. Not all old school guys operated like that, but I'll say a very old school concept was, in terms of fatherhood and manhood, was like, hey, bro, you got to be a provider, right? You got to be a provider, you got to be a protector, right? And it was like, is that enough? If I just provide for my family eat, and they got a roof over their head, is that enough?
At one point it was. At one point, if you provided that, you're good. I could just sit down on the couch when I get home from work, have my beer, my big piece of chicken, and know that I provided, and I'm a good father. And everyone knew to leave him alone, don't talk to the dad,
The kids might not have thought that was a good father, but that was the standard of the time.
That was the standard, yeah.
Like, standards change. And I had the older guy kind of like break that down to me. It was like, man, if we go back here and we try to base, what's good off of today's standards, like they're not going to measure up.
Right.
But when you understand the context of what they were living in and how hard it was to have a job and to be able to provide for your family, like, you got to give them credit for that, because that's what the expectation was. That's what the standard was for that time. And so because we've been able to evolve as men so much more, in the sense that, like, we're realizing that, like, no, man, I want a full experience, man.
Yeah.
I don't just want this, you know what I mean? So just being in the house isn't enough. You know what I mean? As a father, right? Hey, okay, I'm here, but I don't connect with you. I don't do this. Like, all of those different things. And like I said, sometimes people may have those same concepts about manhood or fatherhood or whatever. And it's like, really take a look at it. And is that something that you want to continue to believe? Is that something that's serving you well? Is that moving you forward? Is that empowering you? Or is that something that's holding you back and ultimately, preventing you from, reaching the fullness of manhood or fullness of life that you intend to have?
Yeah, I mean that's a lot. Yeah, that's a good point, that what a man was back in the day wouldn't apply now. And then, like you said, now I have to think about that. What does it mean to be a man now? It's almost like, it's just, what does it mean to you individually in your home, and not globally what men do?
Yeah.
And I can say for me, in my household, it's being respectful to, of course, myself, be respectful to my wife, respectful to my son, being the leader of the house. And being the leader also means I need to know when to lead, and I need to know when to follow. I need to know when I don't have the answer, to figure out what the answer is. It's being a good listener. It's being able to assess the situation and make a good decision based off of that. It sometimes means, with my son, telling him a little white lie that might put him in the right direction, but just knowing this is the right thing to do. It's that's what I got for right now.
That's cool.
That's a good question.
That's cool, man.
That's a good question, because I know what it is, but to put it into words, it almost seems like I'm just saying being a good human, and not so much a man. What is a man? Man, I'm not sure.
And that's my point. That's precisely my point, because at the end of the day, part of parenting as a father, and I'm not a father, but I just speak this what I understand, bro. At the end of the day, you're trying to raise a good human, man.
Trying to raise a good human, exactly.
It's it. Boy, girl, good human.
Right.
I need you. And that's where it's like cultivating life. not cultivating a boy or cultivating a girl, but I need to cultivate this life because you're a human, bro. And so how do I want you to be able to interact with the world around you?
I would say if you raise a good human, the man-woman part will take over organically. You don't have to worry about that. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely. That's why I think a lot of the talk now of, like I said, I'm in marketing, so pushing certain stuff to kids. Sometimes I'm like, don't do that to kids.
It's stuff like what, man? Go ahead and say it. Go ahead and say it. You're trying to hold
man, back. I got to hold back. I got to. I'm just saying some of the ideology that I hear now. I'm like, why are you doing this to kids?
I'm with you.
If you just let them be.
Yeah.
If you just teach them to be respectful, to, another example is my son. He goes to camp. He had a little situation with a girl where he threw a basketball and hit her or something and whatever.
Okay.
And I think the girl, she didn't hit my son, but she hit another little kid that was messing with my son or whatever. And then when I was speaking to the counselor about the situation, the counselor was like, yeah, and I the girl hit the boys, but I want to make sure the boys don't hit the girl. It's like, well, hold on a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, my son shouldn't have did what he did, but also the girl shouldn't have physically hit a boy either, regardless of if it's a girl hitting a boy and a girl. No one should be hitting anybody. But I teach my son, if you're not doing anything to anybody and someone does something to you, whether it's boy or girl, you tell them to stop, don't do it. But if they do it again, physically, if they do something to you, you have all right to physically get them off of you.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a girl or a boy.
Yeah.
Now, I'm saying that to say that it doesn't matter if you're a girl or boy, man or woman in that situation. I'm getting a person off of me.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, again, I feel like, if you were to just raise good humans, then the boy-girl part will take over, and you don't have to worry about. I have another direction too. I wanted to take this, and this.
Go for it, bro. Go for it. I got about 10 minutes, man. Go for it, bro.
Well,
take it wherever you want to take it.
Well, this is even something that my wife.
Okay.
She's even learning. She's even learning how strong men really are.
Okay.
And with that, she's even said, man, I've been in so many situations where another guy really could have put me down. Really could have popped me in the mouth.
Yeah.
We've been in a situation with me and her where she put me in a situation now where it's like, oh, now I got to fight. Now I got to do this.
They don't think about
They don't think about that. So I'm saying that to say if you teach kids or teach people just to be respectful of themselves and respectful of others, you don't have to worry about the man-woman thing. You already have an understanding of what the situation and what your place is. Your place doesn't mean you're lower than somebody. Doesn't mean you're higher than somebody. It just means that this is the lane that you're in as a woman and as a man. I know right now, if I were to just push my wife with everything I have, she would get hurt.
Yeah.
So so now she respects the fact that, okay, you're stronger than me. I'm going to respect that. I'm not going to look at that as you're better than me. I just respect it and I understand it. I respect and understand that a woman, I'll just speak to my wife, she does things and she does things the way that she does that because she's a woman, and I respect the fact that she's a woman, and she respects the fact that I'm a man. But we don't have to say it out loud like, oh, you're a man, you do this, you do that. It's just an understanding. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like
we on the same page.
And it ain't got nothing to do with women are weak, men are strong, or men can do this and it has nothing to do with that. It's more or less just understand. I feel like when you have power, you have to understand that power and be respectful of your power.
Everybody has their own unique.
Their own unique power. There's things. The way that my wife thinks, I cannot think like her.
Right.
I respect the way that she thinks.
Right.
She respects my strength and my abilities and the things that I have.
That's all it comes down to.
Do you know what I mean?
That's all it comes down to. Like I don't look at the apple and say the apple's less valuable than a banana, man. They both fruit. Man.
They're both fruit.
They're both fruit, bro, and they both serve different purposes. One's got different nutrients, got different vitamins, got different this. I need both of them.
You need both.
I need both of them and a whole lot more. So it's not that one's better than the other, and I think that's part of the narrative that has been pushed out. You know what I mean? I think at the end of the day, a core human need is to be understood, man, and to be like valued. And so
right.
I think when you hear men saying, "Oh man, you don't know what it's like to be a man," that's just us crying out to say, "Hey man, you don't understand my experience."
It's difficult now.
My experience, and so women are, well, you don't understand what it's been. It's tough to be. Have you sat down and explained to me what your experience is? Have I been willing to listen to what your experience is? And that's why I said, I value getting understanding over so much more of the BS. I don't have to agree with you, man, to understand you. I just want to understand you, and through understanding you, I'm beginning to connect with you in a completely different way.
Well, to understand somebody also, you have to respect them. You have to respect that their opinion has meaning, that their opinion has value. And then that same feeling has to be reciprocated when I'm talking to you and I know that what I'm saying holds weight. I'll give you another example kind of off of what we're saying. Like I said a couple times, me and my wife were in marketing. Mm-hmm. So we look at everything we see on TV, anything we see on social media, we don't look at the same as everybody else. You know why? Yeah. Truth be told, because we're experts in marketing.
Yeah,
so I know what to look for. I know why they're saying certain things because that's the world that I'm in. So I had a associate of mine at the house not too long ago, and we got into Will Smith and Jada Pinkett and Chris Rock situation.
Okay.
I explained to him from being on the side of knowing what's going on. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, this is what's happening. Mm-hmm. He did all he could to say, no, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. He didn't respect the fact that I'm an expert. I'm an expert. Me and my wife were experts in the world of entertainment, in the world of marketing, in the world of advertisement. We're experts. So I'm not able to connect with that person because you don't respect me as someone that's a leader in the world. That's like me going to Michael Jordan and trying to teach him how to do a jump shot. Well, no, really, this is how you do a jump shot. Really? Michael Jordan? You're going to try to teach Steph Curry how to shoot a three-pointer? The same dude who shoots it, turns around and doesn't even wait for it to go in because he knows when it goes off that wrist like that, I already know it's going in.
It's money.
It's money. I can't teach Steph Curry about shooting three-pointers, but he can teach me. Mm-hmm. So, I think a lot of when we're talking about man, women, how to be a man, I think a lot of it has to deal personally with respect of yourself and respect of others, and understanding that, not everyone's situation is the same, but there's a lot of similarities that I can learn from, and that other person can learn from, and we can bring those together, and we can be good humans and good men and good parents.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
Good way to end it.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Excellent, man.
Appreciate that.
Bro. Yes,
that was
sir.
fun. I enjoyed.